I'm positive that there is no one else in the world doing what I'm doing. I mean, the most common response I get when people see my grand scale backlit artworks in person, 99+% of the time they say, I've never seen anything like this before. So while there are other AI artists that are much more known and have gotten a lot further with various exhibitions and installations and museum shows and so on, they're not doing what I'm doing. I'll tell you that.
I'm Mark Cook, president of Windfall Partners. We get leaders unstuck and thriving with their teams. After turnarounds as chief executive, the largest ever studies of award-winning leaders, a New York Times bestseller, and 5-star keynotes, I've coached 4,000 client wins at top brands. My Bold Encounters is an advanced system for leading. First, powerful steps on a path forward. Second, problem-solving skills that beat obstacles fast. Now, lead with Bold Encounters today.
Welcome to Bold Encounters. Today I have with me such a fascinating person, Daniel Ambrosi. He is a very interesting artist, not just your common photographer, painter. He has grown up in many fields. He's a polymath for sure. And now this year he is killing it, as they say, in the world of AI art. And while we all just got introduced to this and are trying it and stumbling and it's not even close to what we want or need or the world would want, he's been doing it for over a decade and a half, and he knows what it's all about. And wow, you can tell when you look at any one piece of his art. How are you, Daniel?
I'm doing great, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Good. Yeah, this is a treat. Really, I love art and I love photography, and I'm starting to love AI. Not too much my son people, but I love using it. I stumbled on you in Tom Mangelson's gallery up in Park City, and you're fresh moving from the Bay Area, and there you were. It was such a chance and wonderful meeting. That was so great. How are you connected with Tom? Obviously, you're in a similar field, but tell me about your relationship with Tom and the people that work for him.
Well, in addition to being an artist, I'm an art lover. And one reason I moved to Park City, two reasons in particular. As a landscape artist, there's a lot to be inspired by around here. My work does start with a camera. I don't consider myself a landscape photographer. I consider myself a landscape painter whose paints and brushes happen to be cameras, computers, and AI. But in addition to, but the fact is I have to start by capturing source material photographically, and that requires being in these amazing places. And so, for example, in the last month, I took 3 trips as far as to actually 5 national parks. Went down to Joshua Tree. On the next trip, I was in Arches and Canyonlands, and on the 3rd trip, I was in Grand Teton National Park in Yellowstone. So that's one reason. The other thing is, as an art lover, Park City is a great art town. Main Street has just a slew of great galleries that cover a wide range of styles and subject matter and so on. And I just love downtown. It's a real downtown. It's a historic mining town, as you know. It's not a manufactured ski town made to look like some Swiss village. It's the real deal. And I, at least once a week, walk from my place in Canyons Village to downtown, which is a good, close to 5 miles. I'll take the bus back, which is free and convenient, to kind of shorten my walk. But it's a great opportunity to, in this beautiful area, to take a long walk, listen to an audiobook or a podcast, and then hit all the galleries and see what's new. I'm a fairly extroverted person at this point. I think every gallerist on Main Street knows me. Yeah. Sometimes I wonder if they think I'm a nutcase, because I'm always popping in and looking and studying what other artists are doing. I love to meet gallerists and their artists and speak with them about the things that we have mutual interest about. So I just happened to be stumbling in on my little trek into Mangelson's gallery when I met you, Mark.
Yeah. That was a pleasure. Yeah, he's certainly extremely talented in his own way. The reason that I was also bold enough to bring this up, we had a bold encounter both ways, because not only did they introduce me to you without a prompt, and you were so friendly and cordial, I wanted to ask you to do this at the end of our conversation, really, because you said one thing that I want to bring up as part of this introduction. And usually, we cut this introduction short, but this is really a fascinating year for you. So we're going to talk a little bit about it before we go childhood for a second. And at the end of our conversation, you talked about how you had a recent experience with Christie's, the auction house for great art and creative works. And one of the people that ended up, I'm not going to steal your thunder, but one of the people that bought your piece led you to then being invited by Sotheby's. And I don't think I'm going to let you talk about it. In fact, I'm going to have you place your modesty aside, please, for the audience's sake. And I need you to start there and tell us that story so that I don't butcher it or leave something out, because I love this story, and it is a record-setting, like never before done kind of a thing. So tell us about Christie's and Sotheby's quick.
Yeah, and just so you know, the connection to Sotheby's was not through the buyer of my piece. That was pure coincidence. But, being invited as a living artist to have a primary sale at one of the major auction houses, and there are only two, Christie's and Sotheby's. It's a duopoly. The rest are far behind. But Christie's decided, I guess it was in October last year, to start planning what became the world's first ever dedicated AI art sale. They invited 34 artists from all over the world, including me, to participate in this online auction with a physical exhibition in New York City at the Rockefeller Center, New York headquarters. And it was an interesting experience because it was not only a seminal sort of groundbreaking exhibition, but like other art exhibitions of that sort that have happened in the past, like when the Impressionists first got together 150 years ago, there was huge backlash. That Impressionism show, the term Impressionism was offered by a critic as an insult. It was meant to be an insult. And now it is perhaps the most beloved art movement of all time. Similarly, talk about no publicity is bad publicity.
Yeah.
When Christie's announced their show, an open letter signed by 6,300 traditional artists was sent to Christie's demanding that the show be canceled, accusing us of theft. Now, a couple things. The AI that I'm using was not trained on other artists' work at all, let alone without their permission. It was not even created to make art in the first place. It was part of a computer vision system that was literally trying to interpret consumer photos. And in the process, it ended up creating some very interesting effects that ultimately became a tool one summer 10 years ago that people played around with, and I saw the opportunity to customize for my own purposes. And that's what I've been using ever since. That said, some of the new AI tools, the AI image generators, what people call AI generated art. My art is not AI generated. It's AI augmented computational photography. It starts with a large multi-image panorama that is then interpreted by my AI. But so the AI generator software programs out there, there is controversy there. There's nuance. It is affecting the livelihood of artists for hire or commercial artists, no doubt. I think some mistakes were made in terms of how that was rolled out and how those things were trained. Personally, I think training an AI on other artists' work that is available on the internet is fair use. The output of that generative AI software is another story, and there are nuances there we can spend an hour or more talking about.
10, yeah.
But my point is, there was controversy about this show. It actually drew a lot of attention to the show, which as soon as the open letter got published, I was actually thrilled. I pushed back a lot on their premises, but I was thrilled knowing how much attention this was going to bring to the show. And it did. I was interviewed and pictured in an NBC News article and various other online articles of my opinion about this. I've been working, innovating in digital art, computational photography, computer graphics, and AI now for 44 years almost. Not too many people can say that. So I have plenty to say on the subject, and I'm not shy to say that. In any case, the show went very well. Of the 34 artists, all but 6 people received bids. I was one of the first to have a bid hit the estimate range, and you're not supposed to really know who bought your piece, but I offered that if the successful bidder wants to meet me, I'd be happy to talk with them, and they did get in touch, and I won't tell you exactly who they are, but I will tell you that they were once the former president and CEO of Sotheby's, which is pretty bizarre because it was my first piece at Christie's. Now, the fact that this person bought my piece at Christie's has nothing to do with the fact that a few months later, Sotheby's came calling and invited me to be in their upcoming Contemporary Discoveries auction the second week of July. So that's a done deal. That's happening. The paperwork signed just yesterday. I transferred my digital artwork to their Ethereum wallet. It's an online only auction that, in my case, my piece is not a physical piece in this instance. It's a digital piece, a natively digital piece. The piece at Christie's was a physical 6 foot tall by 30-inch wide light box, but the Sotheby's one is a digital piece. So when that happened, I'm just starting to learn a lot about the high-end auction world in fine art. And what I learned was a couple of interesting things. One is it's very rare that they do primary sales at all. They're normally about secondary sales, where a collector is selling an art piece that they bought from an artist or from some other collector, whether the artist is dead or alive, or whatever the provenance is. They are now attempting to sell the piece on the open market, usually for one of the reasons that in the auction world they call the 3 Ds: debt, death, or divorce. That's where most of that business comes from, is people offloading art for those reasons. Not always, but that's often the case. Primary sales, which are sales of art never sold before, especially by a living artist, is very rarely done in these auction houses. There are 3 reasons why they might do it, and the reason that applied to me is sometimes they want to highlight an artist or artists who are working in an area that's new and that they want to highlight, like AI art. So that's why Christie's came calling. So in any case, auction results are and always have been public, fully public. Christie's and Sotheby's are both almost 300 years old. I asked ChatGPT to give me some examples of other artists, other living artists who have been featured in primary sales in both major auction houses in a single calendar year, and it was not able to cite a single example. So I don't know if I'm the first for that to ever happen in 300 years almost, but it's certainly exceedingly rare. So it's a huge honor, and I feel incredibly grateful for the opportunity. It's one of several things that have happened in this last year upon 14 years of pushing on this rope in what is my fourth and by far hardest career, trying to make a living as a fine artist is almost impossible. And let's distinguish fine art from art for hire. Fine artists make what they want to make, and if they're lucky, someone buys it. Artists for hire or commercial artists are making art based upon what someone else wants. I don't do that. I have in the past done some commission work and so on, but I haven't done that in a while. Some people do both. I'm strictly a fine artist, trying to express myself, pursuing an artistic vision and objective that I've had for decades. And in the process, hoping that my work will be seen and purchased. And it's like I'm telling you, it's almost an impossible way to make a living. It's so rare to have the kind of success that I'm starting to have. I'm knocking on wood. I have some ideas of why it might be happening for me, but it's been quite the journey. Until this last year, I've probably asked my son, told him I was going to quit about 1 million times, which will lead us to an interesting story that we'll get to later. We talking about the tough challenges and what happened there. But anyway.
Well, before we leave that point in your resume, we'll go backwards here. It won't hurt anyone. It'll be very interesting, I think. So, we're talking about Christie's and Sotheby's, and so maybe ChatGPT got the fact checking wrong. You never know. It makes mistakes, as they advertise at the bottom every time you enter something. But to also sell it to a former Sotheby's CEO and have those two auction houses sell your work as an original artist is probably one all by itself in 300 years, I'm just guessing. So that's that's an amazing accomplishment. And at the high end of the art sales. We're talking to people about careers, and in spite of the fact that this is a very long shot, your journey, as we talk about the past, gives a little bit of a path where you can do some things in life that are high risk as long as you're hitting base hits. You can swing for the fence once in a while, so to speak. But I want to ask you about another thing. You got invited to do a solo exhibition at Roebelent and Voena in London. Then you get invited. Well, I'm going to let you tell this story. Tell that story as well. It's just as fun.
Yeah. So this is the story, Mark, of overcoming adversity, really.
Okay.
Because in 2011, in 2021, just coming out of COVID, in the fall of 2021, I was invited to be in a group show in London. So I figured if I'm going to go out there, in addition to showing art, I'm going to be making art and seeing art. I'm an avid, fan of landscape painting from the past, and London has amazing museums. So I was going to be spending my time looking at a lot of museums. I also brought my gear specifically to conduct a photo expedition in the English Lake District while I was there. So that's why I went. And in the process, when I was in the English Lake District, I got really lucky with conditions, rainbows galore, amazing lighting. I got cloudscapes. I created a collection I was really quite proud of, and hoped that maybe if when I got back home over the winter, I could create a collection worthy of perhaps being my first solo show in London. That was the goal. So a couple months later, I had work that I really felt was the strongest I had done, centered on the English Lake stuff. And I tried remotely shaking trees of connections in the UK to try to make a solo show happen in the UK, and ideally for the spring of 2022. And I was getting nowhere fast. So I decided on my own dime to head back to London in April of 2022 for a month with USB sticks in hand. Now, the thing about digital art is, I don't know if you've heard the term phygital art exhibitions. These are exhibitions of digital art in physical galleries on digital screens. They call them phygital exhibitions. Unlike physical exhibitions, which can take months to stage, you can stage a phygital exhibition in a matter of weeks, because a lot of times the gallery already has all the screens installed on the walls. All you've got to do is change the files in the screens and you have an exhibition. So I went there hoping maybe I can make something happen on the ground. After about a week and a half of getting absolutely nowhere, I was walking around one of my favorite parts of London, Mayfair, where the Royal Academy of Arts is, and a lot of galleries and so on, trying to make the best of not a great situation. I was actually very discouraged at this point. I remember this afternoon very clearly, trying to keep my chin up, enjoy being in London and seeing other great art. But I'll be honest with you, Mark, I was hurting, and I was as close to quitting as I ever came, questioning if I really blew a bunch of money traveling over to London again for no good reason. It was, I was trying to keep a stiff upper lip, as they say, the Brits, but I was in a bad way. And bing, I get an email on my phone, and I take a quick look at it, and it says, hello, Daniel, this is Robilant and Voena, a gallery headquartered in London and Mayfair. We have galleries in Milan and New York, and we're planning a group show with artists like you with this theme. Is this something you're interested in? Now, I get a lot of emails like this. They're almost always scams, and I figured this was one of those scams. So I put the phone away and figured I would look at it later that night at the hotel. Later that night after dinner, I get to the hotel, I start to dig in, and I'm like, oh my God, this is the real deal. This is a blue chip gallery that's been in London for 20 years, dealing in old masters, Italian contemporary, Italian modern, modern contemporary, and so on. The galleries I had worked with up to that point were mostly complete flakes. This was the first real high-end professional gallery to come after me. And because I was tenacious enough to keep going after this dream, and despite the discouragement and the cost and the time, I was in a position to respond to these guys and say, yes, I'm interested. And as luck would have it, I'm in London right now and will be in your neighborhood tomorrow. Shall we meet in person? And that changed everything. We had a great meeting, 2 meetings that month. A year and a half later, they gave me my first solo show in London. And I have to tell you, that year and a half was like the 7 trials of Hercules. They ran me through the gauntlet. I had to do a lot of proving before they blessed me and took me on as an artist.
Like what? What are you talking about? Proving? Like they see it?
Well, first and foremost is before we go any further, can we see one of your large light boxes in person? Do you have any in London, Milan, or New York? And I said, actually, I do have an 8 by 12 foot light box in the Google office in New York City. When are you going to be there? Let me know. I'll meet you there in person. And they said, well, we're going to be there next week. And I'm like, well, I can't be there next week, but I'll get you an escort and let me know what you think. Now, that was like the first sort of test or whatnot. It was these Robilant and Voena, they're amazing gentlemen from northern Italy. They are true cultural elites. They do not offer compliments lightly. They they deal in old master paintings they sell to major museums. They are not going to blow smoke up my butt when they see this piece. But at the same time, I knew that this piece I have in the Google office, which is still there, in fact, is a really strong piece. And the morning of their visit, I said to my wife, you know, if their response is anything less than enthusiastic, I'm just going to suggest we walk. What's the point, right? And I knew
so
that if I did get enthusiasm from them, that it would be real, because they don't offer compliments lightly. And an hour after the visit, I got an email, and the partner said, we saw your work at Google. Your escort was very polite. She took good care of us. Your artwork is spectacular.
Wow.
For them to even use that word is like,
Yeah.
so let's go to the next step. And then the next step was they had an idea of what they wanted for the show in London to be, or what they wanted me to work on. And I don't do commissions, but I do take suggestions. When they first suggested the subject matter of what eventually became the show, which were the English landscape gardens of Capability Brown, the 18th century landscape architect who almost single-handedly reshaped the English countryside, I pushed back initially thinking, well, I already have this work from the English Lake District that I'm really proud of. What about that? And they're like, that is good stuff, but we don't want that. We want this,
Of course.
because a big part of what they do with the contemporary artists that they take on board is they only bring on artists that show a clear line and reverence for art history, and so that they can create a narrative for their sophisticated collectors of how this person is like on the leading edge of a pantheon of development in the history of art. So I'm like, okay, all right, that's what we'll do. And then I actually had to go back there a year later in April of 23 to capture the work, which was one of the most challenging months of my life. The weather was not cooperating. I had ultimately, in 30 days of being there, attempting to capture panoramas in 10 different Capability Brown landscapes, I had 9 shooting days. I only ended up with 9 viable shooting days. Driving a stick shift little Fiat around those roundabouts, those 3-4 lane roundabouts, was white knuckle. It was just, talk about stress.
Wrong side of the road.
Yeah, that too. And there was so much at stake. This was going to make or break my career. It was a big one.
So much time invested too. Like, there's the make or break, and then the kind of the sunk cost temptation we all have. Like, so much invested.
Yeah, and then as long as I know in this in your podcast series you like to get into the sort of the business challenges and whatnot. Toward the end of that month, I went to London to meet with them for what I call the meeting of meetings. At this point, I knew that I had the goods. I couldn't process them on the road. I had a lot more processing to do when I got home, but I knew I had the goods. I even knew what size the pieces should be and where they should go in the gallery.
Wow.
So we have this meeting to discuss next steps. And everyone was there, the partners, the associates, the top sales guys, the marketing person, her apprentice. I mean, it was,
wow.
Talk about a pressure cooker. And one of the salespeople, I think he hadn't really gotten to know me. I think he was very suspect. He did the classic, sit back with arms crossed, like this, And as I was explaining what I had and where I thought pieces should go. When I came around to saying, and the centerpiece for the show should be right behind you guys on this big wall here, 80 inches tall by 16 feet wide. The sales guy goes, 16 feet wide? Nobody has a wall for 16 feet high, 16 feet wide. I said, well, the big ones like that typically end up in corporations and institutions and hospitality and so on. But then the partner, the partner who was in charge of this whole project, looks at me and he goes, 16 feet? And I said, Marco, it's not even going to be that expensive to produce. It comes in pieces. It'll be easy to get up the stairs. It's easy to put together. You're going to love it. It's going to just be amazing. It's Blenheim Palace, where Winston Churchill was born. It's a spectacular piece. It's going to be great. At that point, they had been talking about having the show start in December of 2023, which is not the best time of year for an art opening in London. But that was my understanding of what we were driving toward. Marco suddenly starts speaking. I'm 100% Italian, but I studied Italian for 3 years in high school. I can understand if people speak very slowly with simple words, but he just rapid fire started talking to his son, one of the key associates, and the other, the reluctant sales guy, that reluctant or reticent sales guy, whatever, who also is Italian. And I couldn't understand a word they were saying. And Eduardo, Marco's son, turns to me and says, what do you say? He turns to me and he says, Marco's decided that what you're doing is so important that we need to bump the artist before you and move you up to October at the height of the art fair season in London. I'm like,
another home run.
Great. So as we were disbanding, I turned to the marketing person and I said, well, that went better than I expected. She goes, right? And so now I still had to present them with the goods. And a couple months later, when I had everything together, I had also, given my background in 3D graphics and my former colleagues that are among the world's best architectural visualizers, I had help from a friend simulate the gallery photorealistically and let me put all the pieces in. And in fact, I can share with you a side-by-side of his simulations created in May of 2023 and the iPhone photos I took of the installation in October of 2023. And it's mind-blowing how perfect they were.
Wow.
So they were completely blown away by the simulation. When I sent them this project page, my proposed pieces and prices and sizes of all this stuff with the simulations in their gallery, I'm like, well, hit send and then, just pray. It took them over a week to get back to me, which was unusual.
Oh,
I was getting really nervous. They are
man.
very busy. They're understaffed and they go to a lot of major art fairs. And, this was one of those times when they were super busy and they had to get Marco Voena, one of the partner, his buy off on this. And finally on Friday afternoon, a full week plus after I sent the work, I get a response that says, thanks for sending this. Sorry for the delay. Everyone was really impressed by the renderings. Marco approves the project in its totality.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, this is unbelievable. Not even a change. In October of 23, I had my first solo show in a global city. in the heart of Mayfair, in one of the swankiest marble-laden, coffered ceiling galleries you'll ever see. We had a great turnout. We had some sales. It was, it's still early. I'm their first natively digital artist. AI art at that point was still kind of a new, unknown thing. I was still very much unknown. The show was very well received. It was very well covered. Had a huge feature in The Guardian with showing tons of pictures. The day that posted, my photo view count on my website went up an order of magnitude or more. It was huge.
That's so great.
But here we are now, 2 years later, in October this year, they're giving me a solo show in their New York City gallery about Central Park, which came on the heels of another amazing story that has to do with the Christie's piece, which I can go into after I give you a chance. You sure? Okay.
Yeah. The only thing before you do, let me just ask one thing that actually, because you're going to get out. This one's going to be different. So I know a little bit about it. So the this effort to get that deal done, I just want to highlight a couple of things. Your persistence, you call it persistence. You were going everywhere. You were doing everything. You were handing out these thumb drives everywhere. There are so many times when we all feel despondent in spite of what we're doing and believe in. I just want to hear the number. So how many would you estimate doors, phones, emails, whatever, voicemails did you knock on, so to speak, before you got that call or that email that you thought was spam?
Over the course of this journey?
Yeah, well, not the whole journey, but just that journey, that specific, like trying to get that phase of your work covered and doing it in London.
Oh, yeah. Dozens, for sure. Yeah. Dozens. But, I mean, so much more goes on to that. I think this might be a good moment to just, before we get into the whole New York exhibition thing, what I believe has helped my cause.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So the first thing you need to understand is that in the arts, and I'm not just talking about fine art, I'm talking about also acting and music and so on, there's a lot of talent in the world, and yet very, very few people get to the place where they can actually make a living doing this stuff. And I've looked at that very carefully and thought about why that is and how to improve the odds. And what I ultimately realized is that there's only so much the artist can do. There are elements of luck that have to fall your way. But fortune favors the prepared. The harder you work, the luckier you get, that sort of thing. Yeah. So what I've come to see in the last just year, really, is that I try to live by three core principles that seem to be making a difference for me: discipline, patience, and gratitude. So I see these as a triad on a triangle, where discipline on the left side of the triangle, going up the triangle, is what allows you to rise up to your potential. Patience is what slows you down to the natural order of things, the timing that the universe has in mind for you. It's not up to you, the timing. And it's very easy to fall into the impatience trap, thinking that you should have been rewarded by now or famous by now or whatever. It's not up to you. And the foundation of all of this is gratitude. We're just so lucky to be alive, period, let alone able to do these things we're doing and living in the places we're living and so on. So just to flesh that out a little bit, I think discipline, really thinking about your whole life, not just putting in the work, which is absolutely essential to the thing that you're trying to make happen, but just living a disciplined life, taking care of your body, exercising, flossing your teeth, making your bed, keeping your house clean, all these things, just doing the right thing when no one is watching. This mode of being, I think, really helps, like I said, rise you up to your potential. Patience is so key because, again, the timing is not going to be under your control. And, it's a total waste of energy to get anxious and be impatient when that emotion is not going to change a damn thing. So that's super key. I've really gotten a lot better about that in the last couple of years. I'm still not always super patient with others, but I've become a lot more patient with myself. I'm still working on the other part. And then gratitude. This is the big thing about gratitude, is that in the arts, it is impossible to get anywhere without the help of champions. And there are a lot of talented people in the world for champions to get behind. And if you give off an attitude like, oh yeah, but I'm different, I deserve to be the subject of your championing, it's not going to go well. You need to be deferential and grateful when someone like the Sotheby's guy that bought my piece at Christie's, sends me an email, hey, I've been showing people your work. Everybody loves it. They want to know more about it. Can you send me some more information about it? I'm like, that's great. Thank you. Yes, here you go. I'm just totally so grateful that he's excited about it and showing his, can you imagine the friends this person has that are movers and shakers in the art world? So yeah, gratitude, sincere expressions of gratitude will go a long way. That's what seems to be helping me.
Amen. Yeah, it is true. The discipline. The reason it's nice to start there in your model is because 9 out of 10 people don't do it. I read a book once. I wish I could reference it. I can't remember what it is, but it was a sales book that I had read earlier in my career. And he said the truth. He said, if you don't make 10 calls a day to the people that really might benefit from what you do, you're just kidding yourself. And if you don't let that last at least 3 months, no matter who you are and what you do, you're not going to be successful. And 9 out of 10 people don't want to make the first call. Most people don't want to make the third call. So that's an extraordinary number if you do the multiplication compared to 1 or 2 or 3 calls and saying, I better just go get a job, or I just better quit and go back to school, or whatever the case may be, or stay in the same career, or whatever. So discipline is so important, and yet what you're saying about the patience is so true, because nothing happens great that is done alone. And so, like you say, whether it's a mentor in a more traditional job, or whether it's someone who is going to send you sky high, like in your case, in so many cases, they're going to respond to the people that are grateful, period, and the people that have been patient and behaving in their timing. And the great thing about gratitude at the end is that it feeds the one before. People are looking for a reason to contact the person again. And anything they do that's positive, even a nice email that's not even a yes or maybe yet, but just being polite, just saying thank you for not saying anything derogatory. I'm so grateful. People notice emails like that. They're just powerful. So it's a great model. I don't know if that was your pivotal moment in your career. It sounds like it might have been. It sounds like it was the one. If it's a classic art gallery, famous around the world in multiple locations in these big cities, was the pivotal. But I also want you to get to your New York City depth story. But was that is that the big pivotal moment that was subsequent to the big struggle, or what was your pivotal moment?
You know, at first I thought it was, and
Yeah.
I've learned a lot more about that particular lottery ticket. I mean, in a nutshell, I think to actually make it in the arts requires three things, only in succession, only the first of which is under the artist's control, and the other two are both like winning lottery tickets. That's how hard it is. How many people win 2 lottery tickets? Okay.
Yeah.
So just in a nutshell, all the artist can do is you got to have the goods. You've got to have the critically acclaimed work, the exhibition history, the basic marketing chops, you know, to get your name out there and so on. This is absolutely required, but it is not sufficient to take you to the next level. What I've seen over and over again is that what seems to be part of the successful artist's trajectory are these 2 lottery tickets that happen afterwards, neither of which is under their control. It's a bit of luck. The first is what I call resonating with the zeitgeist, the spirit of the time and place. Picasso was really interested back in the slums of Paris in 1906, going to cafes and talking to other smart, artistic types and philosophers that didn't have any money at all, but were very excited by what they were reading about Albert Einstein and relativity and some of those discoveries. That he ended up developing Cubism partly out of that conversation at the time, and it resonated with the zeitgeist, and that helped put him on the map. There's countless examples of folks in music. I mean, I think Elvis Presley is a great example of having a passion for the music of black folk that he decided to try to make his own and express it in his own way, inspired by this sort of music. And he expressed it at a time when America was ready to hear that. And so his timing was lucky. You know, I won that lottery ticket in 2016 when I became one of the first in this generation to see the opportunity to use AI in art. There have been examples of that since the 1960s, but in this current generation, it really kind of started in 2015 when I first caught wind of that. And when I started producing work in 2016, after my collaborating engineers superscaled this open source code from Google for me, and I started exhibiting. That's when the fine art world started to take notice. So I got lucky. I won that lottery ticket.
Well, let me ask you a question about that. I think it's a really interesting question for this zeitgeist that we're in right now. Again, minus the fact checking, we welcome anyone to fact check this, and we'll change it in the show notes. But there has to be, like, the fact that you were that early doing what you were doing and asking what you were asking at Google, there has to be some moniker that you get as the first AI artist of X or something. Wouldn't you estimate
Well, I
that
wasn't,
you're
I
one of the
wasn't
first?
I wasn't the first, but I'm definitely known as one of the AI art pioneers of this generation. Absolutely, you'll see that in articles all over the place because I have been at it and exhibiting for so long now.
Among that group, if I beg you to put your humility aside, and is there something that you are particularly stronger at than others that you can say, yeah, I'm one of the pioneers that is this, and really put yourself singular among that group?
Yeah,
it's just interesting.
I'm glad you use that word singular, because I've had that. I've had people use that about me a number of times, because I think I'm positive that there is no one else in the world doing what I'm doing. It's just such a weird, idiosyncratic, quirky mix of passions that I've invested my time and energy into producing. And there's just no one else anywhere. I mean, the most common response I get when people see my grand scale backlit artworks in person is 99+% of the time they say, I've never seen anything like this before. They're really, I haven't either. There's no one else doing, 500 megapixel AI augmented computational photography. It's just, there's no one else doing it. And it's not like I set out to be singular. It's just, I was following my nose and my passions, and that's what I did. So while there are other AI artists that, from my, time frame, that are much more known and have gotten a lot further with various exhibitions and installations and museum shows and so on, they're not doing what I'm doing. I'll tell you that. It's pretty unique.
Yeah, it's interesting. I noticed a couple of things when I was looking at your art, and I'll talk about those in a second. But I also want to say, I want to ask actually, so you have an architecture background and you have a computer science background and
computer graphics, actually.
Computer graphics.
Yeah.
So a sub of computer science. So, the Computer History Museum in Silicon Valley holds your work. And tell us about that. I want to hear about that.
Yeah, that was...
that's really proof in the pudding. Like, they're not going to just put every AI image that's been created up. So they're a little bit helpful in this question that I've asked. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so the Computer History Museum is the most important museum in the world for all things computing. It started in Boston and quite a while ago moved to Silicon Valley, which is where it really belongs. It is an amazing place. I highly recommend anyone going to the Bay Area to take some time to go to Mountain View and go to this museum. You could spend weeks in there. Their archive of the history of computing is world class. I mean, it takes you all day just to quickly skim it, let alone actually dig in, right? And then they do these special exhibitions as well, and they have events there and so on. So I had a chance encounter with a friend of a friend who works at the Computer History Museum, and I told her about what I'm up to and what a classic Silicon Valley story this is, in that I would not be here talking to you today, Mark, if I hadn't known and gotten the help of two brilliant engineers, top Silicon Valley dudes. Joseph Smar ultimately became a principal engineer at Google, which is 0.5% of the engineers at Google. His best friend, Chris Lamb, was the youngest guy to be made VP at NVIDIA, the world's most valuable company right now. And when I approached Joseph with who I had worked at a startup with before, again, just Silicon Valley, it's a fertile ground for these sorts of encounters. I told him, hey, Joseph, you know that Deep Dream stuff that Google came out with this summer? If you could superscale that for my giant images, which I know you can do, I'll let you have my ski condo at Whistler for a week. He's like, what? Send me an email, whatever, So I send him an email with low resolution tests using just the stupid web software that came out based on this AI. And he shared it on the Google intranet, and it went viral inside Google. People loved it. They were like, finally, someone is using Deep Dream, which is the name of the software, for artistic purposes, not just as a novelty. Because up until then, that summer, the viral phenomenon of Deep Dream was essentially characterized as people turning their family photos into psychedelic nightmares. Everybody had a laugh. That was about it. It came and gone. In the meantime, I had my guys spend 6 months of their spare time super scaling the code for my purposes and giving me an interface that I could use without them, because they're busy guys with young kids.
Yeah.
I can't be hammering on them.
Yeah.
So, they staged a proprietary version of Google's Deep Dream, a super scaled version for me on the Amazon cloud on a quad GPU compute server that I am still using to this day. I'm the only one in the world with this version of code that enables what I do.
Wow, that's some trust.
But where I was going with that is that story was a classic Silicon Valley story that caught the ear of the person from the Computer History Museum that I had a chance encounter with. And long story short, they ended up acquiring one of my large 8x16-foot light boxes as in their permanent collection, which is now the first thing you see when you walk into their special exhibition, Chatbots Decoded, which is about the history of AI. So it's a huge honor to be in that space and to be the first thing you see walking into this hot exhibit about AI. Again, I'm having a year, Mark. I'm having a year.
Man, you are having a year.
We still haven't talked about the Central Park show and all that, but yeah.
Thank you for joining us for the first half of this interview. Now go to markspencercook.com/podcast or your favorite podcast provider or YouTube to see the second half of this great interview.